Now, I did mention how having one domain draw from another can cause problems when you update that other domain. And that's where harmonization comes into play. Domains can independently update. If you're the owner of a domain, you can change the thing anytime you want. You're also allowed to replicate things from other domains. It's not a good idea, really, but you can do it. You can also create things that ought to have been in other domains. So how do we deal with all that? Well, we deal with it via harmonization, where basically we get everybody together and we figure out where the heck things belong. That's the harmonization process. It cleans up overlaps between different domains where you have two domains that replicate the same concept, and it also grows the NIEM because that's how we find out which things are being used, who's using them, and we end up with a much cleaner, more uniform model. So in the end, after harmonization, everything is where it should be, and there isn't any more significant overlap between domains. Everything's all nice and clean and organized. The harmonization process itself is fed by IEPD development. In other words, what I mean there is that people develop IEPDs. In doing so, they find things that are missing in the NIEM, and that suggests new content. That, along with comparing each domain to each other for overlap, results in a newer, bigger, more organized model. We have a number of different types of releases that can result from all of this hullabaloo, if you will. One is called a domain update, and that's where a domain says, well, we're going to update our stuff. So they do a domain update. Now what happens with the domain update is that you've still got the older version sitting there, and people can optionally use your domain update, or they can stick with the old one. So domain updates don't technically affect other parts of the model, even other domains that draw from you, because they're drawing from an older version of your domain. A second type of release is called a micro release, and that's when you do a domain update, but your changes are purely additive. In other words, you have a domain and you may have added things to it, but you haven't taken anything out and you haven't modified anything that was already there. So the bottom line with that is that other domains that may have used elements and types from your domain won't be affected by your update because you've only added things. So that's a micro release. We haven't had any of those. We have a domain update, that's the Children, Youth, and Family Services. We have not yet had an actual micro release. Then there are minor releases. An example would be NIEM 2.1, where we make changes to the domain. So new things and new domains, and the domains harmonize, and everybody gets all organized and stuff. And we change the domains, but we don't change NIEM core and we don't change the support layer. Those are called minor releases. So NIEM 2.1 is a good example of a minor release. Then finally, there's a major release. The one that's upcoming will be NIEM 3.0, for which there is now approval and motion on. So there will be a NIEM 3.0. I'm not going to give you a time frame because you know how those things go, but there will be a NIEM 3.0. And with a major release, well, all bets are off. We can change everything. Now, of course, we won't change everything, but we'll change a lot of stuff. There will be big-time changes in NIEM 3.0 that affect how code tables work, that will affect how conformance is defined, that will affect some of the odder things in NIEM, like augmentation, which you don't know about yet, but we'll talk about when we get there. A lot of major things can happen. So that's a major release, like NIEM 3.0, which is, as I said, coming up sometime relatively soon. Now, if you ignore things like the infrastructure nuts and bolts and just look conceptually at the NIEM as a whole, well, this diagram gives a really good overview of the entire organization behind the NIEM. And it's fairly complex, so let's take a look, but I really like the diagram. You'll see in the center NIEM, and that's NIEM core. That's the common stuff that everybody knows about and everybody exchanges, and it's common generic stuff. Around that, arrayed like kind of the wheel of fortune, are these different wedges, one for each domain. And you'll see most of them are a dark teal color, and those are established domains. So, and actually, not sure. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, there's actually 2 more in the diagram than there are actual established domains, but it means they don't have to change the diagram for a while. So those are established domains. You'll see the light teal colored one is called future domains. And the idea here is that we have a number of established domains, but we will add new domains as new domains want to play. So when other communities want to play within the NIEM sandbox, want to be part of the NIEM and utilize it for their data exchanges, they can fit right in as just another wheel on the big wheel of fortune wheel. But that's not all there is to this chart, because you'll notice the chart or the diagram is kind of 3D and it's showing different layers. And that's important too, because the NIEM is not just a federal beast. It's not designed solely for federal agencies to communicate with one another. It's also designed for state, local, tribal, industry, and international entities to be able to use it to exchange information. So it can do horizontal exchanges between agencies at the same level. It can also do vertical exchanges between federal, state, local, tribal, all in the same area. So you might be talking federal justice and state justice exchanging information. But it also does diagonal communications. And what do I mean by diagonal? Well, think for a minute about, say, local law enforcement and federal emergency management. Law enforcement is under justice, emergency management is under DHS, I think, maybe, but emergency management is a different kind of beast than law enforcement. Yet when national disaster strikes, those entities have to talk to each other, even though they're not vertically one above the other and they're not horizontal peers. It's diagonal communication, and the NIEM is designed to handle that as well. Very, very flexible, and that makes it very powerful in terms of helping out with communication exchanges. Now, if you take NIEM training, the official NIEM training course from DHS, what you will get at this point is a detailed discussion of each and every domain. And that's valuable information, but it's also a lot of information that, frankly, you're going to forget as soon as you turn off this video. I'm going to focus on the one that means the most to me at the time, and the one that's actually funding these training materials. We're going to talk about the CIFAS domain. Now, the other domains also have information, and you can get information about those domains from the NIEM.gov site. So it's not like I'm going to hide this information from you. It's just I'm here to talk to the Children, Youth, and Family Services community, and that's what we're going to focus on here. But if you're from a different community, again, that's fine. The rest of the materials will be of use to you, but you're going to need to go to NIEM.gov to get specifics about your particular community. So that said, the CIFAS domain, CIFAS stands for Children, Youth, and Family Services. It's a new domain with objects relating to juvenile justice and child welfare. So everything in this domain is all centered around children and how we basically keep them well and out of trouble. It's a combination of the Juvenile Justice XML data model, which actually goes back a number of years and was developed in parallel with more current versions of the NIEM. It's a combination of that and the existing Family Services domain. So the NIEM has a Family Services domain that was there since probably NIEM 2.0. That Family Services domain has a lot of commonality with the Juvenile Justice XML data model. A lot of the same sorts of people were involved in the development of each, so there's a lot of overlap between the two. They were combined together to form this new Children, Youth, and Family Services domain that's been heavily vetted by a number of different bodies so that it represents both of these models, both that existing data model and the Family Services domain very well. It is technically a domain update, not a new domain. It's a domain update to the Family Services domain, but it's got some extensive changes to it, and those changes are not solely additive. So it really is a replacement for the Family Services domain, and we would like you to use it in lieu of the Family Services domain, even though the Family Services domain is still there in the NIEM. With NIEM 3.0, it'll completely replace the Family Services domain, and the only juvenile one there will be the Children, Youth, and Family Services. There is a video guided tour available for this domain. If you want to know what's in this domain, the actual elements involved and the concepts and all the stuff in the domain, not just la-di-da-da-da, here's a domain with children's stuff in it, but actually here are some of the elements in it, and here's how we fit them together, and here is what is important in developing this domain, as well as some overview of NIEM concepts that help you understand all that. You'll want to go and look at the video guided tour that we have available. And we'll have URLs as part of the references. We'll have a whole reference section available outside of the actual training material so that you can actually click on the links and get to places. Finally, here are the other domains that are part of the NIEM. You'll see Family Services, Justice, Emergency Management, Immigration, Infrastructure Protection, Intelligence, CBRN, International Trade, Screening, and Maritime. However, Family Services is now deprecated by CIFAS. So while technically the Family Services domain is still a part of the NIEM, we consider it deprecated by CIFAS. And again, If you see things from Family Services that you want to use, rest assured those same concepts are in CIFAS and you should use the CIFAS versions instead. But here are the other domains. Again, NIEM.gov is the place to go to find more information about these other domains if you're coming to these training materials from a community other than the Children, Youth, and Family Services community. Finally, a little licensing information about these materials. These materials are licensed under a Creative Commons license. What that means is that you can take these materials and distribute them yourself, or you can use them as a base for making derivative works. There are, however, two limitations involved. Limitation number one is that if you do distribute these works, you have to distribute them under a license identical to the one I'm showing you right now. And if you want more information about it, there's a URL on the screen. So if you distribute the works, you have to keep the Creative Commons license on them. The reason for that is that it ensures that other people can then take your work and do more stuff with it. These materials go back well over a decade in their original form, and they have been modified and enhanced throughout the years because this license protects the ability to do that. So it's very important. The second part of it is attribution. You need to give credit to the original authors of the work that you're using. So in this case, we're going to give credit to the various works that this work is based upon, and that's in the next slide. This particular work was funded by a grant from OJJDP, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. They're based upon other prior works, partially work done by the Department of Homeland Security under their own grant, and partially under work done over the years by the IJIS Institute, the National Center for State Courts, and the Georgia Tech Research Institute. These materials are a combination of all those prior works modified and enhanced for the Children, Youth, and Family Services community.